good afternoon, Carl.
Hello, Michael Kitces. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I'm enjoying the turning of the spring season. It is well underway here. Trees are budding. Allergies, unfortunately, have been particularly heinously bad for me this year. I've no idea why. I'm not even usually a bad allergies person, but I spent most of the past week just walking around with my eyes watering indoors. Like there was a day that I was stacked with meetings and I never set foot outside of my house and my eyes are just red and puffy and watery from allergies.
Well, I
So
think it's the problem. You should have stepped foot out of your house. I think
is
that's
that the
probably
problem? Maybe I'm
that's
allergic to
probably
the
yeah.
indoors now.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, it's crazy. It's been a we don't need to spend too much time on the weather, but it's been this amazing, really warm winter, spring, and then it snowed an inch last night. So like my walk this morning, everything covered in white, super beautiful, and now it's green grass outside. So it's that time of year in Utah.
It's turning. It's turning.
Yeah, yeah.
So what
Speaking
did
of
you
things
want
we're
to
allergic to.
What was that?
Speaking of things we're allergic to,
Oh, sure. All right, what do you want to cue us up on today?
how about every once in a while I run across that's a terrible, terrible intro. Every once in a while I run across beliefs that I just always assumed were true.
Okay.
And like my wife's actually quite good at this. Like I'll just say, well, that's because that's how you do it, right? Like,
Right.
and she'll occasionally say, says who? Like,
Uh-huh.
we can't move to New Zealand. Says who? And you know where that ended. But
In New Zealand.
yeah, yeah, we have these beliefs sometimes that we just accept as true, and I and
Okay.
and I love it when you occasionally get a chance for some reason, and I'm never quite sure why these happen, but to question them, and I
Okay.
sometimes I refer to them as Carl's little heresies, because sometimes I get in trouble for even
Uh-huh.
questioning some of these ideas. And I have a new one.
Oh, okay.
I have a new one.
Well, let's just go right in without any fear of repercussions or
Oh yeah, I've
consequences.
long since gotten over that. Well, I still have that fear, but I quite enjoy it now. And often I'm wrong though. Often I'm wrong. So let's just hold this one loosely. But here's the question I'm asking. Why do we have to get both spouses involved? Like spouse or partner? So let me just paint a scenario.
Okay.
And I'll tell you, like, I'll give you a couple of threads. It'll take a minute to tie these threads, and then we can talk about it. So I've always been taught, like, is grave business risk if you didn't almost force both spouses to be involved. Like, I will not meet with you unless you're both there. I there's even language that you hear a lot, like, how do you engage the disengaged spouse,
Yeah.
right? Like how do you pull it? We have training around it. We have it's almost it seems like a code of professional conduct somehow that you like have to involve the spouse that may or spouse or partner that may or may not be interested. Okay, so
Well,
that's
you're doing a financial plan for a couple. Yes, it feels slightly obligatory.
yep. Okay, so here we are. And then so I had this interesting experience.
Okay.
Um, because it turns out I'm the disinterested spouse in our relationship. Like
With you and Corey, like in
that's
your
exactly
in your marriage.
in our marriage as it relates to financial planning. I'm the disinterested spouse. I'm the one that was like, do I have to go to this meeting? And
Come on,
our,
Carl, you're the financial planner. How did you
I
become the
know, I know,
disinterested
and
spouse?
that's why I identify more as an artist than I do as a financial planner. So interestingly,
Hmm.
our
Okay.
our financial planner, who's named Christy and my wife decided early on, like our relationship with Christy's relatively new. I mean, almost probably 5 years now. Early on in that relationship, they fired me from needing to be at the meetings. Like they said, hey, we don't think you need to be here. And I remember,
So apparently Christy didn't get this memo that you're supposed to
no,
engage
I
the
think
disengaged
Christy,
spouse,
I
not
think,
fire the disengaged
I think
spouse.
Christy might be one of the enlightened ones that believes this heresy that I'm about to share. So but I remember being this much. And for those just listening, like I'm making like a millimeter with my fingers, like a teeny, teeny, teeny little amount hurt. And all the way to the moon and back, thrilled that I had been fired, that I'd been relieved of this pressure to attend all the meetings and review all the agenda items. And I was like, what do you make of that? Like if we, so that's thread number two is I was thrilled. And so
Okay.
here's what I'd love to talk about. Like
Having personally been the disengaged spouse, you were
the dis
happier when they allowed you to disengage.
that's right. So I have three things I want to talk about. One, just that general idea, heresy or not, Michael, if we were playing a TV game show and you had to say heresy or not, like how would we number two, how can we change the language? Because that language, I did not consider myself disengaged. That's a really negative term.
Yeah.
It implies something
So,
that needs to be fixed. So I want to
but
talk about
yeah,
the
yeah, it
language.
does. Yeah.
I want to talk about the
So,
language. And then the third thing is and maybe we should start with the third, but I actually have been thinking about this for quite a while now. Recorded a Behavior Up Radio episode on it where I'm processing it. I came up with two rules that if you're what I was referring to as the disinterested spouse, there's two rules that you have to follow to make this still work. So
okay.
what order would you like to approach this? Heresy or not? What we call those people and what the two rules are.
I would come back to the rules at the end here because I
Okay.
still want to talk about just this phenomenon. So, what would you call yourself as the
Totally
as
disinterested.
the insert word spouse? I don't want to say disengaged spouse because
It was the
that's
word that
offensive to
kept coming to
you as
mind.
the
Yeah, I was
insert
having this
blank
great conversation
spouse.
with Dr. Bruce Ross at University of Kentucky. I was having this conversation on a podcast with him, and we were using disinterested and disengaged. And he actually afterwards we had an email conversation where we came up with some different words like, like intentionally delegated or creatively interested in something else. so but I would have called myself like just disinterested. I just really didn't disinterested.
Okay. So and to the point that you were happy when you don't have to go to the meetings anymore.
So happy, like literally so happy. And I was just
What
thinking about like if I had to go to a meeting tomorrow, well, you could even ask our financial planner.
what
It's impossible to pin me down for a financial planning meeting.
what well, if I disliked the meetings that much, I would probably be hard to pin down for a meeting as
Yeah,
well, which
yeah,
maybe is part of the point.
yeah.
So what made the meeting so unpleasant for you?
Well, and I should be really clear. I believe if there was anybody who could make these meetings interesting for me, it's our current financial planner.
Yeah, like I'm pretty sure I know, assuming it's not a fake name, who Christy is. Like Christy is a fantastic financial planner. So I'm like all the more fascinated both
Yeah.
that she couldn't sway you and that she was in with your wife to fire you from the meeting
Well,
because
she went a step further and said the fact she said the fact because prior to that we went a couple of years without a planner,
okay.
and we had one prior to that before too, who was also awesome. But there was a period of time where we didn't have a planner for a while, and Christy said to me, using some of my own words, which I always find quite annoying. She said something like, "The fact that you thought you were the best person for this job, like that Carl was the best person to be the financial planner for the Richards family," she said, "is hilarious."
The Richards man being your family, like what gave you the presumption that you could be the financial planner for our family just because you did it for other families?
Yeah, she was like, "That's hilarious." So I think what Christy's actually done though is pull a giant trick on me because now she just calls me, like kind of in the middle of a day, one day, and just checks in and wants to have a I think she's doing this in a way that really works really well for me. But the traditional meeting with the agenda, sit down as a couple, have a conversation about the budget and the numbers and the projections, just wasn't interested in it.
So as I want to go one moment further there to really understand because
I
I mean
can
I
feel
just like
myself getting in more trouble as you're asking more questions.
it's all right. It's all right. It's not my problem.
I know.
So, so I guess here's what I'm trying to understand was is it the just the literal meeting part? I don't like meetings and have to show up to meetings and be present for meetings and do all the diligent things that you do in meetings. Or is it the money part and the financial planning part? Like I don't enjoy having these money conversations and needing to navigate a bunch of these money decisions.
Yeah, I mean, I've actually thought quite a bit about this because it's sort of like there's some piece of this that I have to be, and I am now speaking on behalf of, I'm happy to personalize this, but I'm also speaking on behalf of all disinterested spouse or partners everywhere.
Okay.
There's some part of this you have to be really careful as a disinterested spouse or partner to not abdicate your responsibility, right? Like that's cute that you think you don't have to be involved in these tough decisions. Like I found myself saying that to myself, like, hey, wait, are you just bowing out because these are tough decisions? I don't think that's the case. I'm okay with hard decisions. It's just, it's not the way my brain works. Like I like to think of creative solutions to things. I like to think of, I don't do well with projections about the future that I know won't be exactly like I don't know what I don't do well with meetings. Like it's barely I can barely stand sitting down to talk to you for 45 minutes.
I know, and the secret is that we often record two of these at a time when we
I
do it. So you're like stuck with me for almost an hour and a half
No,
in
no,
total.
I like conversation, right? So
Yeah.
conversation dynamics and again, it's not that like our financial planner and my wife are both dynamic and really good at conversation. So I don't know. Why do you think? Because you've known plenty of these
Yeah.
disinterested spouses. Why are they not interested?
So I mean, look, I feel like I've seen so many different reasons over the years, or at least like, try to figure out reading between the lines of family dynamics for disinterested spouses. So for many, and I mean, this has shifted a little bit now doing this 25 years. When I started, right, retired clients were mostly silent generation.
Hmm.
So to stereotype lightly, like a lot of very traditional family dynamics and family gender roles, right?
Yeah,
The
sure,
I mean
sure.
the standard there was something to the effect of the husband was responsible for the balance sheet and the wife was responsible for the checkbook.
Yeah.
So she paid all the bills and she knew all the money in and out, but he did the investment things and the assets and liabilities. And so investments and a lot of financial planning things were more balance sheet exercises than cash flow, at least especially then. And so very common that I mean the disinterested spouse was disinterested because this couple made a couple's division of labor decision
Yep. Yep.
50 years of marriage before I showed up.
Yep.
And they were not
Yep.
particularly interested in changing their 50-year marital dynamic because I said, well, I'd really like you both to be at the meeting.
Okay, let me just let's remove because I think you're right. Traditionally, that has been an issue, and I'm actually curious if we can get to because I was thinking something very similar. But if we remove gender from it, the, I think there's something very similar going on with um, leaning into strengths.
Yeah, I mean,
If we're division of labor, like I don't say to I happen to really enjoy and am pretty good at like the landscaping. And I don't say to my wife really is also good at it and enjoys it, but would
is
rather
she
do
the
some.
disengaged
Yeah,
landscaper?
that's why I don't say to my wife, how come you're so disengaged in landscaping? Right? Or I there's we could think of lots of other examples of like where you've said, hey, you really like that, or at least you don't mind that. Would it be okay if like I actually don't mind doing the dishes. I find it to be a creative activity in a
Well,
zen, a really
yeah.
zen activity for me. I don't say to somebody else, hey, you're a disengaged dish person. We've just
Well,
made a division of labor decision
yeah.
based on interests
Well,
and or strengths.
and I mean my rough guesstimate over the years. Um, I there are certainly, you know, over the years there were more couples that did it the other way around from a gender perspective than it was for like my, retiree silent generation clients at the beginning. But I will say I again, I mean, my like purely anecdotal lived experience, I don't feel like division of labor is any less than it used to be. Just couples are more varied about what their roles happen to be than what it was
True.
historically, right? So I don't know, whatever it
True.
was, if 20% of clients had a disinterested spouse, 20% of clients today still feel like there's a disinterested spouse. It's just back then it was like 100% of the time it was a wife, and now it was not necessarily a wife. There was a wider range of gender decisions. But
Yeah.
the phenomenon of, hey, it turns out division of labor is kind of a thing in business and in couples, and that couple probably made a division of labor decision long before they got to your office, and they're not necessarily interested in upending that division of labor decision. Like that rings like true and reasonable to me from what you're framing here. I still get some like, yeah, but issues, which maybe we'll come back to in a moment, but just on its face value, like, do couples have division of labor about stuff that they deal with in their household? Yeah. Is that a thing? Yeah. Has that always been a thing? Yeah. Is that going to continue to be a thing? Probably.
And what's wrong with us? Like imagine the relief I felt. I was thinking about this with clients because I have specific clients in my mind that, in fact, I can remember a client named Judy who was just incredibly like she was a full blown like professional artist, incredibly whimsical, and she literally couldn't even stand the meetings. And I kept trying to get her to come, and now I wish I could go back and be like, Judy, guess what? You don't need to come at all. Could you just send us a note? Could you take a minute and journal on like what's real? Like, and we can get to the two rules in a minute, but like, give her a way, give the disinterested spouse a way to participate so that they're feeling seen and heard, but they don't have to like instead of forcing, I can think through, yeah, another one by Brian, Denise took care of all this stuff. And Brian really didn't want to be there, but I was like, you have to be there. Now there's important decisions being made, and I get that. So that's why I feel there's a little bit of shame from my perspective. When I felt great about being fired, I was like, huh, there must be something wrong with me because both spouse or partner are supposed to be equally engaged in this meeting. That's what we do.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So look, now my like, hey, what about sort of asterisks now start cropping up.
yeah,
There, like, I still struggle very much with, but I just literally don't know how to make a financial plan for you and plan for your shared goals if you don't show up in the freaking meeting to show me what the goals are and help me
yeah,
understand where you want to go, particularly because now, as I've said in other versions of this podcast, like, I don't even believe your goals when you tell me your goals. I'm like, I gotta go a couple of years deeper
right,
to get to what the
right,
real goals are. Now, speaking, I guess, rhetorically in this conversation, like, okay, so maybe there's a difference between I need both of you engaged in the initial planning process because we need to make a plan
yep,
that reflects both of your goals and
yep,
objectives and values and what's important to you. But after we get through that part of the process, if one of you wants to be the primary in this relationship, because a lot of our client couples already do that naturally in how they divide things as a couple, we're happy to work with you on that. I mean, I don't know. I mean, Would it have been easier in the early planning meetings with your wife and Christy if Christy at least told you you have to be at this one, but once you get through the initial planning process, I'll let you off the hook?
Yeah, yeah, I think that's interesting. I think to me, where I land on this is like, if we just gave ourselves permission as planners to lean into the strengths and feel like to look
Our strength, the
strategic,
couple strengths, like
the
they're
couple strengths, and to feel and to think strategically about it. And one of those would be like, hey, maybe once a year we just need to check in, big vision, and maybe that meeting's held somewhere different. Like maybe it feels there. Maybe it's on a walk. Maybe it's what Christy's doing now, which is like slipping in these phone calls every month or so, every quarter at least. Hey, just want to check in. And then after I hang up, I'm like, she was just financial planning me. Like maybe that's more what I'm thinking, but I do like the acknowledgement of like, hey, so yeah, and I think you're right initially. So let me just quickly, to get this out of the way, the two rules that I came up with, and again, I am sure I'm wrong about all this. I just think it's an interesting discussion for us to be having as a profession. The first rule was the person who is creatively disengaged, creatively, intentionally not focused somewhere else or something. I don't know what the right word is. That
is
person has
disinterested okay? I feel
I
like
kind of like
disinterested is
disinterested.
reasonable.
I kind of like disinterested as long
Okay.
as it doesn't feel like disease, like it needs to be
Yeah,
fixed.
it's not.
Like
It
intentionally
feels. I mean,
disinterested.
disengaged feels judgy. Disinterested is like just acknowledging you're really not interested in this conversation, are
Because
you?
that's exactly what I would say. Like, I'm just not interested. So
Yeah.
the person who is disinterested
Okay.
needs to feel completely heard. And so that falls on all parties involved. So like the disinterested person, like I would say to the disinterested person in this case, and I've been in like you think of this as like maybe how a really good board runs. You
Hmm.
want or like any sort of council, right? Like you want everybody there to vehemently, like aggressively argue for their perspective.
Hmm.
And in order for the person who's in charge that's ultimately going to make the decision to be able to make that decision and hold a cohesive board,
Hmm.
everybody on the board needs to feel like they were heard.
Right.
Because then if I'm going to make a decision and it might be that we're going in a slightly different direction than what Sally said.
Hmm.
But Sally needs to feel like her opinion was heard, understood,
Right.
honored, even though you decide to go a different direction. So we got to create those conditions, and that falls on the disinterested person, the interested spouse, and the planner,
Hmm.
all of which need to be like, hey, no, we need what would you like, and what would this look like, to find ways to get them engaged in that visioning perspective, like you pointed out. So number one, they need to feel completely heard, not just heard, but understood.
Hmm.
Um, Need to be able to say what they think, what they want, what they're worried about, and they need to know that it's been received. And again, that's work on all parties. Like you'd say to the disinterested spouse or partner, hey, you really got to be vocal here,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
right? And then the second condition is lies on the disinterested spouse or partner. Like
Okay.
if you're going to allow yourself, if you're going to be thrilled about being fired, you genuinely have to be okay with whatever decision's made.
Uh-huh.
And you have to say, especially if it's a different direction than maybe you would have gone, and these have to be our decisions, not you made that decision. There's no going back and saying, second guessing it.
Okay.
Those are the two conditions I created for myself.
It just kind of feel like couples dynamics decisions in
Sure,
general.
sure. I just think you need to be very overt about it. Like
Hmm.
if you're going to be the disinterested spouse and have the privilege of being fired,
I love that
you
you call it a privilege.
then you need to make sure, hey, wait. I don't think you guys understood this. Like, I really feel strongly about how we fund education for the kids. Or I'd much rather do that than much rather spend money on this than invest it here, or whatever it is. You need to voice your opinion, which could be hard. As I say that out loud, it's interesting. If you're the disinterested spouse, you need to voice your opinion. that may be challenging, right?
Well, it feels kind of challenging if you're not coming to the frickin' meetings, Carl.
How about this? Hey, we're having a financial planning meeting. If one of our regular maintenance meetings, if you'd like to attend, we always love to have you because believe it or not, you add a lot to the meeting. It makes it much better. If you don't want to attend, if it's just not interesting to you or you got something you'd rather be doing, like going to the dentist for a root canal,
Hypothetical comparison.
hypothetically, then like anything, then if you'd like to, just record a quick voice memo. Just talk through anything that's on your mind. Like send it to me. Make sure I have it. And I'll make sure that we get that transcript and we review it as part of the meeting.
So the other thing that strikes me about this conversation, so the to me the I feel like that as planners, this tends to come from two places, like this urge for having both spouses involved. One is something to the effect of, I think what you said earlier, like they're not going to engage in the plan, they're not going to buy into the plan. I can't even make a good plan if I literally don't know what
No.
half the couple's
Yeah.
goals and desires are. So there's some point, at least at the beginning,
Yeah. Reasonable.
that I need you, right? Even you didn't get fired from the first meeting, you got fired after the initial planning process.
That's right. That's right.
So I do feel like there's something there that I don't know how to let go of up front, but maybe I could at least express to a client, all right, you got to go through a little of the early process with me. It's important because goals, your voice heard, input, all those things. But like once we get to the maintenance mode, I'm not going to pressure you to come to all the meetings. I'll let you off the hook, right? However you say that
Yeah. Sure.
appropriately to a client context. The the second reason why we do this, and just I'm fascinated because this was literally in the news like days before we are recording this episode.
Oh no, you're going to talk about some like the retention of the spouse or something.
Of course, that's why you care about the engagement, Carl, because I don't want to lose the spouse. Right, you've
Yeah.
all the thing. You was
Yeah.
a
Yeah, of course.
70%,
Like if you know how many spouses like that, yep.
70% of spouses leave
Everybody's
after
gonna
the
leave. You've got to engage them.
right. You've got to engage. So now this is fascinating to me because there was an article that just came out from is like some consulting firm that does interesting data on consumer trends, uh who were took on this question about um advisor or like consumers firing clients. So I don't know the full details to say, but like they get panel data from consumers, they look at them longitudinally over time. And so they just actually like went back and looked. I'm not sure if it's longitudinal or they just ask over the past 2 years, but they tried to find out how many consumers actually change financial advisors. And I think their number was something like 5% of consumers had changed advisors in the past 2 years,
Well,
which I heard. I'm like, okay, kind of rings true, like 2 or 3% a year switching around. That's about where a lot of firms are retention. And then they went and looked at the widows and said, if you are a recent widow, have you fired your advisor recently? And the number that they came up with was 13.7%. So call it 14%.
what are you talking about? I thought that number was like 70 or 80, like everybody.
Yeah. So this was the thing. So then apparently they went to track down because they were like, huh, we got 14% and the industry says 70%. So they went to try to track down the origin of the 70%. No one can find the origin of the 70%. The
Oh,
people
come
who
on.
it's commonly attributed to is Spectrum Research. They called the old head of research of Spectrum and he said, no, that number didn't come from us. I don't know where it came from, but it wasn't from us.
Come
So
on.
no
We're
one can
talking about
actually
heresy all the way down.
no one can find the origin of this number or validate it or find any research to substantiate that it was ever actually measured that way.
Are you
So,
really?
yes, like they went completely cold trail
There's
to
a
everyone
whole
who's ever been cited as giving that stat, which eventually went back to a research firm that said that didn't come from. It's like George Walper ran research for Spectrum. He's like, we never had that finding. In fact, he said, like, I have no idea where 70% came from. 70% of consumers don't change anything that fast.
We've had a
So even
whole
he was incredulous.
generation or two trained,
Yeah.
building process and procedure and engagement models around that fear.
Now, again, they did find, again, I'm like roughly rounding the numbers. 5% of consumers leave every 2 years in general, and
Sure.
14% of widows. So, like,
Sure. Sure.
okay, the attrition is 3x as bad,
And
but
that
it's
would make
not
sense.
40x as bad to get from like 3% to 70%. I guess
I
that was
wouldn't have been surprised if
5x.
that, like, you'd almost expect that number to be 15 to 25%. Like, that's a reasonable thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, goodness, even if I've got a great relationship with the spouse, just, yeah, that level of turmoil and losing a spouse, like maybe you make some
Sure.
changes in your life. I mean, some
Sure.
subset of those is probably because I just prefer a local advisor. And when my spouse
Or,
died, I moved across the country to be near my grandchildren, and I found a new advisor who's local to me. I mean, there's so many
sure,
reasons
some trust relationship or a
that
million different, yeah, a
that
million
can
different.
change.
But anyway, the point is that's fascinating. That's the point.
So yes, I mean, to your comment, right? I mean, why do we call it disengaged? Right? I mean, there's a frame of that. Who are they disengaged? I mean, they're disinterested because they're not interested in the money stuff.
Subject matter. Yeah.
They're disengaged because they're disengaged with me. I mean, that's a planner centric word to
Yeah.
me, not a client centric word. And it comes from because you're supposed to engage the less engaged or disengaged spouse because you don't want to lose them because 70% of widows leave. And now all of a sudden it's like, well, maybe not many of them actually leave
Yeah.
in the first place, which was why I was interested even when you brought this up, that maybe we really are making a much bigger problem out of this than we have to be. Or now I even start wondering the other direction, like, cool, how many couples over the years did I just not get because I was so insistent that both members of the couple have to be engaged? And the truth was, if the disinterested spouse, which spouse's choice was do all the meetings that I'm going to make that person do, or just not get a financial plan, I'm going to bet in retrospect, a lot of them just didn't get a financial plan.
For sure. For
And
sure.
now I'm not even helping them
Yeah.
incrementally versus, at least in retrospect, okay, maybe I could have insisted on the upfront planning meeting, but not ongoing, or as I guess as you've highlighted with Christy, find other ways to engage. Now, if
Yeah.
Christy comes and listens to this, I'm betting that you're not going to get phone calls every month anymore, Carl. Like,
I don't know that it's every month. It's every other month. And I hope I keep getting them because I enjoy them. And so I think that's to me, you know what I love about, like, as we wrap up here,
yeah,
I think my favorite parts of the work that I get to do and my favorite episodes of this show are ones that ask interesting questions. And I'm
yeah,
okay with not having the answer. Like, I just think it's an interesting thing to that maybe it's not heresy. Let's be open to the idea that maybe there's other ways to look at it. What would it look like? What would the world look like if I mean, if there are people like me, I'm honest, like, I was so thrilled, so happy. And I even wrote in the, yeah, anyway,
yeah.
that,
I mean,
so one of my best days, you know? So
clients
if there are
hire
people
us
like,
to delegate and not deal with this, and then we made a policy that says, that thing you wanted to delegate, I'm going to make you keep coming to the meetings. So
that's
the
right.
thing you didn't want to do and hired me to delegate.
It's just interesting for us to bounce that around.
Yeah,
So thanks for doing it.
awesome. Thank you, Carl.
Cheers, Michael.